Wait, we're inside.
I know. I'm just feeling it.
Dancing?
Pixar was going to be black pickle. Pick it back in. Oh, there it is.
Jazz picks. Yeah.
Live high, live mighty, live righteously, taking it easy. Live high, live mighty, live righteously. Try to picture a man to always have an open hand. See him as a giving tree. See him as matter of fact, he's not a beast. No, not the devil either, always a good deed doer. And it's laughter that we're making after all. The call of the wild is still in order nationwide. In the order of the primates, all our politics are too late. Oh my, the congregation in my mind is this assembly singing gratitude and practicing our loving for you. Live high, live mighty, live righteously, and taking it easy. Live high, live mighty, live righteously. Live high, live mighty, live righteously, taking it easy. Live high, live mighty, live righteously. Live high, live mighty, live righteously, taking it easy. Live high, live mighty, live righteously, taking it easy. Welcome back, Joe. So, Joe, you're staying with us, right? You're not going back to school? You sure? Hey, don't encourage him. Hey, welcome to Collective. If you didn't already get one, you can get a sheet and a cup of coffee back there by the bar. You can sign up for the weekly or support Collective financially. Also back here at the Support and Connect table, which has no computers tonight for supporting nor connecting, Ben. We're training people to get on their phones, so we'll go over that here in a minute. If you're with us online, welcome. you can log in to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/We Are Collective Church. If you log in, you can chat with us online. So please do that if you haven't already. We're going to be hosting a one-time book group discussing The First Christmas, which is an amazing book and easy to read. That's going to be on December 7th. More details are to be determined. Hey, I caught it. I'm good at this. I meant to do that. I'm going to hold this. So, I'm going to awkwardly hold the mic stand now. That's going to be on December 7th. More details are to be determined. You can grab a book from the back by the bar tonight or during office hours on Tuesday if you'd like to start reading it. Mark your calendars for these 2 dates. The Collective Christmas Party is coming up. That's going to be Sunday night, the 11th. It's during normal service time, so we are not going to have a service that evening. Instead, we're going to be decorating sweaters and cookies. There will be an ugly sweater and cookie decorating contest, so make sure to come prepared for that. There are going to be children's books and activities, and just some unprogrammed time to be in community together. The Neighborhood Center Christmas Toy Drive is coming up as well. It's the 4th annual Community Christmas Barbecue. Is that correct, Waylon? So they're looking for newly or gently used toys for kids between 1 and 12 years old. We need those to be dropped off by December 15th, and you can drop them off on Sundays or during business hours on Tuesday and Thursday between now and then. Our 5th annual Community Candlelight is going on in Chess Park. We changed the date, though, so if you have already put that into your phone or your calendar or your planner, it is now the 18th at 5 p.m., so please change that. That night, our own Mike Furlong will be here in town, and he's going to close the night with a few songs from his brand new Christmas EP from Mike the Prophet. If you guys haven't listened to the new album yet, I think he has some stuff on YouTube, and he's released this album, so you guys should definitely go and listen to this. It's an event not to be missed. Please help us to bring out the community, so spread the word to let people know that we'll be there this year. We're also beginning Advent tonight. I know some of you don't know that. We are within 4 weeks of Christmas now, and we're in the month of November. Hi, Sarah. She does an Advent wreath every year with her class and didn't realize that's starting tomorrow. So things to do tonight. We're beginning Advent tonight, so if you're watching online, grab the Advent care package that we sent you. You're going to need your candle shortly. If you didn't get one but would like one, please email us at info@wearecollectivechurch.com or find a candle around your house to join in with us. Stay connected with all things Collective by downloading our app, which you can download. It's the Collective Church app in your app store on Android or iOS. You can support Collective financially by texting We Are Collective Church to 77977. I don't know what? Just We Are Collective. Oh, We Are Collective to that? Oh, no church. So just We Are Collective to 77977, or go to collectivegives.com. Whether you're with us remotely or here in the flesh, welcome.
This is our community statement. Hi, y'all. We value highly the metaphor of journey. We're different people from different places and backgrounds, representing a multi-generational community, and we've traveled different paths. So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us, next to us, or in conversation with us. We challenge ourselves to be sensitive, knowing this community includes a diverse group of people, from lifelong followers of Jesus to people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist. We strive to avoid offense, ask good questions, articulate and explain our responses. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language because we believe that the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity. So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
So we're going to come up and talk a little bit about the role of Collective in our life, but we're also going to give an update on the pledge drive. So, Ange, you want to go first?
Yes, we actually were supposed to prepare a little bit more for this, but we watched The Crown this weekend, and if you haven't been watching that,
It's awesome. It's Stacy's fault, entirely Stacy's fault. But
That's what collective is.
yeah, no, I really do want to say though, that I think it's changed me more than anything in the last couple of years. Being a part of Collective, being a part of a community that's focused on love and being honest with yourself and with other people. So I do have to say that Collective has been a really good thing for me and for my family. So I have to be very grateful for that. So thank you to all of you. But I want to say that your funds support our vision, and our vision has included, I want to talk about our vision for children. We have started, since I've been here, something for, not just for the little kids, which we've had since I've come here, but we've started something for the older kids. And that's grown from just coloring in the back to hiring a full-time licensed teacher to do lessons that coordinate with what we're doing in here. So right now they're getting a lesson that is sort of like what we're going to be having in here, junior version. And myself and Sarah, we're both teachers, we write the lessons so that they coordinate perfectly, well, kind of perfectly, with what Ben is doing, at least as much as we can, make it kiddie. And we try to have a craft or an activity for them. And so we've been doing that, but now our vision is going to go a little bit further so that we have something for the middle school and teenage population. So we're looking to hire somebody for that position next. So that's what your funds are going to be supporting in the upcoming years. So I wanted to talk about that. Moving on.
All right. I haven't seen you guys in a while. Hey, Mike. I went to school in Boston, but I don't know. I think a very large part of the reason why I'm there is because of Collective. Collective helped me come out of my shell as a performer and as a singer, as a guitar player. It was a great way for me to kind of what's the word? Play on a consistent basis, and it's very hard to find a community like this where they're very open to letting you be you and how that can enrich the community and provide enjoyment and fun and spirituality in an interesting way. Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. So a couple of things. So this is week 2 of the pledge drive, and we're actually doing quite well. We're at $9,150 in terms of pledges, and our budget is $13,000. So that means $13,000 a month. Is that correct? Right. And that's what we're looking to raise. So our gap isn't that big when we think that we only have 5 weeks left to go. So if you haven't renewed, and I'm not sure if our pledges is counted in this number, but okay, it is. Okay, good. All right, just making sure, because I haven't talked to anybody. You just rolled it forward. No, it's good. And we have 50 pledges so far, and last year we got to 62. So again, we have 5 weeks to go. We're doing quite well. It's a nominal budget for the amount of connection and time and services that we have with each other. And that's, I think, I want to echo your sentiment. When I was growing up, my dad came across this saying, and it said, all we have is love in each other. And I believe in investing in each other. I believe in spending time with people. I believe in the sense of purpose and accountability that living these values brings. And so I invest financially, time, energy, and emotionally into this community. And it's a beautiful place to be. So take your time, think about it. Look at how you invest in this place and in these relationships. Thank you.
Tonight, we light the candle of hope. We have endured a year of fear and anger, confusion and violence. We endure with hope. We have hope that our hope will endure. We light the candle of hope as we hope for an experience of God with us. Emmanuel, God with us. All of the justice we long for, the goodness that sets our fears at ease, the reconciliation that quenches our anger, the peacemaking that settles our tumultuous hearts, the gentleness that soothes our violent inclinations, all of these harbored in the name of God. God with us. We hope. As we light this first candle, those online, please join us in lighting your candles together. Tonight, we ignite the light of hope.
Oh, come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, thou day spring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadows put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Oh, come, desire of nations, bind all peoples in one heart and mind. Bid envy, strife, and quarrel cease, and fill the earth with heaven's peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel.
That was really nice. We're going to be quiet for about 4 minutes. So as you sit a little more heavily in your chair and plant yourself a little more firmly, gently close your eyes and pick a few words or a phrase that gives you comfort. Something that reminds you of love, something that reminds you of peace, something that reminds you of God, but a phrase that is yours. And repeat that over and over. And as you gently close your eyes, try to stare into the middle distance, and you may have a sensation of light. You may see your own Advent candle in your mind's eye. We'll sit silently for 4 minutes.
Now you don't have a word to call this kind of the year that made you new and begged to turn you right. Two dead birds underneath the headlights. Every sound they ever made to call out they are alive. Every piece of me that breaks, trying to keep from sight of doubt. Don't you doubt, everybody's seen some winter. Don't you take the dark way out. Don't you doubt, even your breath is breathing another one. Don't you take the dark way out. Thin wind, winging in the silver times. Yeah, it took you by the throat, but it wasn't the killing kind. Now you don't tell it like you used to. Every day left in the dark is gonna come back to you. Every hole left in your heart is waiting on what you'll do with doubt. Don't you doubt, even your breath is bleeding another one. Don't you take the dark way out. Don't you doubt, everybody's seen some winter. Don't you take the dark way out. Don't you doubt the reasons I did in the growing in the ground. Why to give, why to take, why to have been kissed by another one. Why be mean, why be anything at all? Just be the man, be the child, be the cold midnight soaked in the bones of this town. In the breath, in the pink, in the honey taken from that green thing. In the cold, in the poor, in the want, in the want, in the sound your body knows. All there is, see the gem, your hands are lined with all they ever had.
This is a reading from 1 John, the 4th chapter, 7th through the 12th verse. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us.
In the odd event that whoever makes budgetary decisions at Amazon is watching, this video was brought to you by our 2017 sponsor, Amazon. Just a little help in the budget would be great. Just wanted to inspire you. Such a beautiful video. So let's talk about this. So from the reading and the video, I'll give you guys just a few minutes. So how did the video speak to you of love, of preparing for Christmas, the birth of love that melts away division, even religious division? This video says that so well. And then the passage we're going to tackle tonight, everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. How does this make you feel? What questions does it raise? Take a few minutes, chat about it. We'll come back and see where we go. House rules apply. Go.
I'm struck by the similarity between the two. They're both, like,
All right, let's bring it back together. Give me a couple quick shout outs here. How did the video hit you? Did it speak to you of Advent, preparing for Christmas, melting away division? Either question, really. Responses, thoughts. All right, you two, that table's on it.
Well, I was going to quote Bill.
Oh, wow.
But we talked a great deal about the video, that the first thing that hit us was that we don't want to limit God. When we try to limit God by doctrines, by our own personal opinions, by religious doctrine and so on, that's where the differences come. The common ground is not how we worship, is that we're worshiping the same God, and that unites us. And we also pointed out the humanity of our aches and our pains and our aging, the very things we have in common.
Come on. Absolutely. Brilliant. Do you want to say that, or was that quote good enough, Bill?
That was good.
What's your name?
I was channeling the man!
What's your name, by the way? I haven't met you. What's your name?
Oh, my name is Myra.
Myra, nice to meet you.
Thank you, nice to meet y'all.
Bill, what do you got?
What came to me was that old story about the elephant, you know.
Oh, yeah.
One person says, well, it's like a snake. Well, no, it's like a big thick thing, or it's like a column.
Yeah.
Who cares? Love the person and love God, whatever part of God they're in touch with. Who cares? Just, the guy's knees were hurting. I don't care what doctrine he believes. I want to love him, period.
Love it.
And it was just so loud and clear.
Cool. And yeah, Pete.
From a Buddhist standpoint, the Buddha once said that there's 1,000 ways to it.
Okay.
Buddhism is but one way. And what I took from that, if you believe strongly enough in your particular faith, without judgment of the others, you can be just as enlightened as anyone else. And that's what I try to keep that in mind all the time. So truly, we could all be enlightened.
Yeah.
Just different paths to the same goal.
Love it. Yeah, Frank.
One of the things that struck me was, you know, the ironic love in that thing. You know, when he had the knee pads, and you see, he buys him the knee pads. You think he's buying him a book, and it's the knee pads.
Right.
And the thing that really struck me was love is a verb. Love is something that we do. And the other part that the video doesn't show is we can love, but our love may not be returned.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing it reminded me of is many years ago I worked in a company where I had to deal with some very distressing people. And I remember a quote, it's a paraphrase of a Mother Teresa quote, where she talked about how to love people that distress you, and she said, maybe that person you're called to love is Jesus in one of Jesus's more distressing disguises. And I love that because love is not, we have this romantic notion that love, it makes us feel good, it's an emotion. It's anything but an emotion. It's an action of our will. The feeling and the other stuff is a benefit.
Right.
It's not what the act of love is all about. I don't think Jesus felt really good about being on that cross.
Right.
I don't think it was a feel-good moment, folks.
Right. Right. Any others? Second question?
So
More video?
everybody talks about love, but do we actually know how to hate in love?
That's probably another series. The question was, do we know how to hate and love?
If we hate, are we not born of the opposite of God, which is absence of everything? And how do we process that? Because I deal with that shit every fucking day.
Okay. I don't know. That's a good question.
Something for us to all think about.
Although that did come up in the letter before, the love and hate stuff. Okay. I'm going to ponder that.
And if we say that we don't hate, then we're liars. And that came up in the letter before, too.
True. All right, Kate.
We kind of went on a similar idea of, well, if you love but you also hate, are you still born of God?
All right, so we have some philosophical quandaries in the house.
And then usually what we do then, when we recognize that hated us, we tend to stuff it.
Right.
Oh, I shouldn't feel that.
Pretend love instead.
Pretend love instead.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that's going to make my job harder? Come on. I'm already up here. Bring it on. I won't be answering those questions tonight, by the way.
Oh, shucks.
Oddly, I have prepared a different sermon. But,
why ask the question?
Because it's going to inform the future sermons. Oh, actually, in the past. All right, any other thoughts? So one of the things that struck me when I saw the video, that it gave me so much hope, that even when our politicians don't get it and our religious leaders don't get it, when so much of popular and social media don't get it, Amazon gets it. I thought that was hilarious. And my initial thought was, yeah, but they're not just doing it out of like the goodness of their hearts. They're trying to sell us something. And I thought, yeah, but guess who else is trying to sell us something? Politicians, religious leaders, and the media. The difference is Amazon is choosing to appeal to goodness, choosing to appeal to unity, diversity, friendship, service, and love. And so to echo some of what was said, for sure, we all are very fond of the idea that God is love. And it's great for bumper stickers, and it's good when somebody asks you, what do you believe? Well, I believe that God is love. But what does it mean in the context of this letter? Because we said we sort of got into this letter because this phrase comes from it, and we wanted to be faithful to the fact that we can't just cherry pick out the 3 words that we like and ignore the fact that they come from somewhere. They come from a community. So otherwise, what we do is we end up reading God is love through our views and our desires, and we always interpret it as our intended meaning. So I'm wondering what these authors mean and sort of how they surround this beautiful phrase. That's what I want to look at tonight. So let's begin here. Love appears 14 times in 6 verses. That's a whole lot of love. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Notice he doesn't answer the questions about like hate, and what if you hate and love. What he says is if you love, born of God. I'm just going to leave that there. So God is love. God is love. We've come to celebrate the idea. And without going into a ton of detail, the sort of philosophical grounding in my mind for this is to recognize that love is not an attribute of God. It's not the behavior of God. It's not a metaphor for God. We're not making a simile like God is like love, saying that love is the very nature of God, the essence, the DNA. God does not perform love, nor simply inspire us to love. He's saying God is love. And Pete Rollins does a good job of pointing this out in a way that I think we miss. And he uses light, and we've talked about this before. God is not the object of our love any more than light is the object of our sight. We don't see light, nor do we look for light. It's light that enables us to see. Light is not visible. Instead, light renders the world visible. So same with God and love. We don't love God, Pete says. God is not the object of our love. Rather, God is the name of the experience of love itself. It's what's happening between people when we love, that which enables us to love, we might say. He gives this example. This sounds tinny. Does that sound tinny to you? You take some of maybe it's just me. I'm hearing it right there. Tin can. So he gives this example, and I've experienced this the first time I went to New York City. It was overwhelming emotionally. He says, think about walking on a busy street, and you come upon someone you love. While you're walking, you're passing hundreds of people, and you do not really see them. You might register them as objects just to avoid them, but they don't stand out to you. But when you see someone you love, they stand forth from the background. They arise from that mass of others as distinct, someone you can see. So with this in mind, God, we could say, is the name that we give to that experience where things are called into existence for us, where God is not seen, but is testified to in a particular way of seeing. So God is love. As it says at the end of this passage, God can't be seen. No one has seen God. So God is not an object. We could say God is not a being, but rather God is testified to in a particular way of being, namely love. And loving one another, right, the ones who we can see, that's this experience of God. So God is love. Great. This helps name and identify God. But the thing that's actually much more fascinating to me than that little phrase, God is love, especially because it's Advent, and the story is that gods are being born amid the scandal of teenage unwed mothers. God is being born in people, is not God is love. What's fascinating to me is what the passage actually says about us, about people. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Everyone who loves. And note, it doesn't name with any more specificity than that the object of our love. It doesn't say that we have to love God or we have to love Christianity or we have to love even in any particular way. It's very generic. Everyone who loves. Maybe even the ones who hate, but who also love. The ones who love, everyone who loves is born of God. Offspring, son or daughter, family, kin, however you want to put it. One of my favorite podcasts, actually, the host says this. He chooses very specifically not to say kingdom of God. He actually says kingdom of God, which I think is so great, as in the domain of God's family, rather than the domain of God's kingship. And God's family, by the way, everybody. Everybody. Now, this is fascinating because in the next passage, we actually get some serious internal tension and static in this passage, this question. So this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. Now, the phrase one and only is fascinating. John loves this phrase, the John community. Throughout the Gospel of John, we see this, the famous verse, John 3:16. God sent his one and only Son, or only begotten, which is interesting. The NASB translates tonight's passage in that same way. It's not one and only, but only begotten. So it can be translated sort of in both ways, apparently. Begotten means born. So some people say one and only. Some people say the only born Son of God. The only born Son of God, right? And for many people, Advent, getting ready for Christmas, is about the fact that there is only one. The only born Son of God. The only born Son of God. The only born Son of God. Everyone who loves is born of God. The only born Son of God. Everyone who loves is born. What is going on? That's some serious internal tension in this text, because he's just said everyone who loves, born of God. And then the very next verse apparently says only one is born of God. So here's the deal, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I think Jesus as the only Son, or the only begotten, the only born Son, is actually pretty bad news. Because really what that means is that none of us have been born of God. None of us are children of God. Merry Christmas. Go in peace. There's something going on. Something's off in this passage with the way that we've typically heard it and sort of been told to understand it. The issue, surprise, is in the Greek. And we spent a bunch of time in the original language to try and make sense of this. But here, this phrase, one and only, or only begotten, only born, the word that's translated both of those ways is monogene. Monogene, Greek word. Fascinatingly, it contains neither the word only nor begotten. Doesn't contain the word only. It doesn't contain the word born at all. Neither of those are in this phrase. Mono is one, as in mono and mono, or monotheism, or mono, the one kissing disease to rule them all. Mono equals one. Mono. So it does say one. It does say one. Gene, this Greek word, we would say it in English, gene. gene. It's translated kind. Kind. Not like be nice to your brother or sister, but genus, species. And so monogene is best translated one of a kind. One of a kind. Not only begotten, not one and only, but one of a kind. We could also say unique. We could say special. And I can't tell you how many people I know, how many conversations I've had here with folks outside of our community who I think would really like to be a part of Christianity. They'd certainly like to be a part of a community. For whatever reason, this has sort of been the wall for them. They can't get past it. This idea that Jesus is the one and only, the only begotten Son of God, as if Jesus is God and then sort of God no longer matters. It becomes all about Jesus, sort of like Jesus worship cult thing. And they say things like this, and you guys have had conversations like this. Of course I think Jesus is special, right? He probably was a prophet. Of course I think he's unique. Of course I think he was a Son of God, but it's the Son of God thing, the one and only, or the only born. And they say to me, of course, Jesus was very important, like Gandhi or Martin Luther King, like any of these leaders who have changed the world. Interestingly, in this passage on the first Sunday of Advent, I think what we find is agreement. Agreement. Jesus is one of a kind. Jesus is unique. Jesus is incredibly special. But he's not the only one. He's not the only one. I'm honestly kind of wondering if I'm going to have a job tomorrow because you guys are being very quiet. And this is not, I think, this is not sacrilegious. I don't think this is heresy. Actually, I think this is the point of Christianity. Remember, because Jesus says at the end of John's gospel, the same Spirit that makes me the anointed one will be in you. And he says the people that come after him will do even greater things. It sounds like the point is that he's not the only one. Not the only one, not one and only, not the only born. Lots of other folks are born of God, and you can see them all around you. Just look for the love. And for many, even conservative Christians, this born of God thing isn't exclusive to Jesus, right? But it's very quickly turned back into a singular and exclusive mark of admission or belonging with questions like this: are you born again? As if this is a status, or it's an event, or it's a one-time deal. And then all sorts of things get attached, like these little proofs and little tests. Like, well, you're not born again unless you speak in tongues. You're not born again unless you've received the ghost, whatever the hell that means, or whatever else. And here again, it says, everyone who loves is born of God. That's the singular litmus test. Apparently, just according to this letter, everyone who loves. Apparently, born again actually means love again. It's a practice, an ongoing way of living. It's not some belief, but it is our actions, as several of you pointed out. So if you're asked, are you born again? You can say, yeah, every time I love. Every time I love, I'm born again, and again, and again, and again. And I think the same with Christmas, especially for people who are not like religious or don't consider themselves Christian, or they're not really sure. But if people ask you, and people ask because it's, PC police and all that, do you celebrate Christmas as if it's just a day or as if it's just a season? But what we're saying is this is really what's beneath Christmas, right? This anticipation and preparation and Advent for the birth of God in the love of Jesus, who then points to the birth of God in the love of everyone who loves. Everyone who loves. So sure, I celebrate Christmas, not just in December and not just on that particular day. I celebrate Christmas every time I love. Because God is born each and every time I love. Now, this resolves this tension and the contradiction in the passage, but there is still this question of what we mean when we talk about Jesus being unique. In the letter, this little passage at least gives two reasons. And I want to start with the second one because it's super weird. And it's actually very foreign to this letter. We don't actually find this much in the letter of 1 John. So this is the one we'll talk about first. God sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. How many of you have heard that understanding of this is what Jesus is, this is what Jesus does, this is why Jesus is special? Okay, so a good portion of us, that's good. And I would agree, just reading that on face value, I would say that would make someone unique to do that or perform that. And this is, I think, probably the one that is most familiar, at least to modern Christianity. It's language that if you haven't heard it, if you're not familiar with that language, it sounds like To put it politely, it sounds like wacky religious jargon. To put it sort of in collective terms, it kind of sounds like bullshit. Like, if you're not familiar with this, you don't have any idea what it is or what it means, it doesn't make any sense. And part of why it sounds so odd is that this comes from a strange, obscure religious belief system that is thousands of years old, and actually no one in our culture believes this. No one in our culture believes this. Let me say this as clearly as I possibly can. Atoning sacrifice for our sins is a metaphor. It's a metaphor. And this shouldn't be a surprise. The John community, the writings they produce, they are chiefly mystical. They're metaphorical. They are not meant to be understood literally. So the ancient culture that they come from worked in this way. And not only do we not work in this way anymore, these beliefs are so weird. They're really weird. It's wacky that we would even talk about this stuff, even though so much of modern Christianity pretends that this is totally normal and tries to convince people really hard to believe this literally. This is a metaphor, and it's trying to help make sense of Jesus' uniqueness. And so the author, 2,000 years ago, used an image that was familiar to that audience. In this culture at the time, they functioned with the belief that if you did something wrong, what they would call a sin, or you offended God, or you broke the covenant with your community, you broke the social contract, the way that you would deal with that is you would choose an animal to substitute for you, and you would have it ceremonially slaughtered by a priest, and somehow magically that would cause the sin to go away from you because that animal died, which is weird. Right? That's weird. And I have been in church for 18 years, and I've never heard anyone explain that and say, this is weird. It's okay for us all to think this is weird. Listen, how many of you are doing this on a regular basis? Right? Except, obviously, for Nate, but he's weird, so. Listen, I am a minister with advanced training in the sacred arts, theology, spirituality. I am ordained with full sacramental authority, and I do not do this, and I have never done this, and I don't know anyone who does this or has ever done this. Ever. This is the foundation of what is called substitutionary atonement. And it gets more complex. You can get different animals of different sizes, and they're worth more or less sins, which oddly enough means that the rich get to sin more. Totally different sermon. Social commentary there. Not surprisingly, you had to buy these animals from the very temple that was performing the sacrifice. This was a racket. And the temple was crushing it. They were making such a profit. Very profitable business atoning for sins, by the way. If we have like a doomsday sort of post-apocalyptic thing and this temple sacrifice thing comes back around, good money to be made in that. But frankly, horribly unjust. Hence the Hebrew prophets, hence Jesus' indignation at the religious establishment, hence Jesus coming into the temple and turning over tables and critiquing this very system. This is how things worked, though. And for lack of any other belief system in the culture, you had to do it. This is just how things worked. It's how they understood the world to work. And so, of course, when you're asked, why is Jesus unique? What makes him one of a kind? You grab this metaphor and you start to go, Jesus is the ultimate understanding of this, right? The sacrifice, the temple system, all this stuff. And so whether it's John or Paul or even Jesus himself using this imagery, what they're saying is Jesus' life and death either satisfied or forgave. And they sort of use both of those, this moral debt. Which satisfaction I don't really like because it actually legitimizes this practice as if Jesus is the ultimate goat and ultimately just satisfies the system, right? Like as if this debt actually exists and it needs to be paid. And so Jesus dies and it pays it. Forgiveness, on the other hand, renders the debt undone. There is no more need for animals, no more need for blood, no more need for sacrifices. It doesn't get paid and it doesn't need to. So what these authors are saying throughout the New Testament is actually scandalous. They're saying this whole sacrificial system, because of Jesus, done. We do not need that anymore. No need for sacrifices. And even though the whole system and the metaphor is such a stretch for us because it's so foreign to our culture, I think the intent behind it is actually beautiful. Without getting into a ton of detail, it was this understanding that there was some sense of incompleteness or separation or lack of fullness between God and humanity, people and the sacred. And when I first became a Christian, this would have been, I was 16 in high school, atonement, and I think it was probably at summer camp, atonement was explained to me like this. at one-ment. Anybody else ever gotten this? This is right? This is how you and God are made one, which after 4 months in the letter of 1 John actually should sound very familiar because it's all about non-duality. It's about the returning of all things to unitive consciousness, God and people and the earth, all things made one. And in fact, Jesus' longest prayer at the end of the Gospel of John is essentially that all people would be one, would be united, they would experience this oneness with God and with each other. And so, yeah, atonement, especially substitutionary atonement, doesn't really work in our culture. It doesn't work for our mindset. It's weird. But the intent behind it, I think, is actually the echo of the same sacred ambition that calls all people, that appears in the world's religions, which is a call to oneness, this unitive experience, reconciliation, this deep and divine connection between people and all things. And even though we may no longer buy into the idea of having to kill an animal as a blood sacrifice for our sin, or even a large universal scale blood sacrifice of killing Jesus, the Son of God, in order to satisfy this bloodlust, we can get behind the idea of an atonement in the sense that what is happening in the Jesus story, what we're celebrating the birth of in Advent leading up to Christmas, is something that offers to unite us in love. It's the same call to the unity of people and God and the world. I want to clarify this because we don't do divinely mandated pledge percentages or expect additional temple offerings or taxes, and least of all do we offer this like pay per sin atonement shenanigans. And so it's important to say, I think during the pledge drive, we said last week, I think you can't buy your blessings here. I want to add this week, nor can you purchase guilt insurance. We don't do that either. Not a part of the way we understand the world or what it is that we're doing here. Yeah, right, the drop, right. Which budget do you want to give to? General, guilt insurance. You'll notice that's not there. And so, yeah, all this being said, this atoning sacrifice for our sin stuff, like I said, is actually the second thing on the list that this author lists as things that make Jesus unique. And even though this has become the obsession of modern evangelical Christianity, I actually don't think it's anywhere near the most important thing. I don't think it's the thing that actually makes Jesus unique, that makes Jesus so one of a kind. Before he says this, the author says, this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his, and it should say unique son instead of one and only, into the world, that we might live through him. Not a cosmic sacrifice to the bloodlust of a vengeful God, but so that we might experience a particular kind of life. Makes Jesus unique. The Greek word, and some of you said this in the conversation, the Greek word might live is actually a verb. It's an action. And specifically, this is the verb form of a noun that we've talked about over and over and over throughout this letter, sort of the focal point of the letter. The author says in the opening passage, we've experienced this life Jesus said was possible, and we want you to share in it. And this is the verb form of that kind of life. Does anyone want to remind us what that kind of life is? I know somebody remembers. Just be the nerd. Shout it out. Aeon Zoe. Aeon Zoe. This is the verb form of the word Zoe. And we said Zoe as compared to psyche, they're both translated life when they come to the English, but they're actually very different in experience. Zoe or Aeon Zoe, this is the life that the author says Jesus came to share, to reveal. As in, this life was already here, already all around us, just beneath the surface, just beneath the sea of our lives, woven into the fabric of all things. And we said Jesus did not create this. He merely revealed it. He pulled back this curtain and said, hey, this life is here. This experience of life in the world is here. Sink into it. Drink deeply of it. Rest in this kind of life. Rooted, grounded, ground of being, firmly planted in the experience of the unconditional. Aeon Zoe as compared to psyche, the other kind of life, which is conditional. And it's conditional. It's not good or bad. It's just conditional, meaning it rises and falls with the tides of circumstance, swells and diminishes with all the different conditions of life. Psyche is what happens to us in our life. It's dependent. It's conditional on the conditions of time and money and seasons, our emotions, the fluctuations of relationships and the market, Jobs, loss, death, success, failure, all these things that move life around, that's the conditional experience of psyche. And this experience of Aeon Zoe is something that grounds us beneath those conditions. And they go by many different names, but I think in experience they're all very similar. Peace, stability, centeredness, enlightenment. It's the thing that we're looking for when we come to spiritual community. Wholeness. And so I think of it like this. As Floridians, we are profoundly grateful for the gift of what is called thermostat. For some of us, 75 is perfect. For some, it's a little too warm. Some, it's a little too cold. We can set it just right. And when the conditions are too hot or too humid or too gross, we come inside. And when we come inside, it's stable. It's temperate. It's nice. We have a place to go inside from the conditions. Sanctuary, rest. And this time of year, when it gets really nice outside and it's like 75 or better and perfect and gorgeous, guess what? We can go outside. When the conditions are good, we go and enjoy those conditions. The inside is always there. The thermostat can always be set. It provides stability. It provides sanctuary inside of those conditions. We can enjoy them. We can come inside from them. We can experience the unconditional gift of the thermostat. And I think the invitation to this kind of life is Jesus' invitation to actually practice setting the thermostat, right? Which means we have to live in the world with all of its conditions, but we continue this rhythm of coming inside and pushing the button, up a degree, down a degree, sinking beneath the waves of those conditions, whatever's going on outside. It's Florida, so it's changing every 10 minutes. But the more we practice, and I think the more we love, the more we sit in silence, and we come to know ourselves in silence. We come to know God in silence. We listen for the Spirit. The more we exercise discernment, we begin to see more and more the unconditional within and beneath all of the conditions swirling around us. The weather, whether it's sweltering or gorgeous, the more we begin to experience Zoe, life, grounded, steady. But here's the trick. That's the noun, Zoe, as in that perfect temperature inside because we set the thermostat right. The gift of the thermostat, the temperature as a thing, but he says live, the verb. It's not Zoe, it's zozimane. It's not life as a thing. It's life as an action. It's life as a choice. It is life on purpose rather than life that just happens to you because it happens to be storming outside. And I love this. This Jack London quote captures this so well. He says, I would rather be ashes than dust. I would rather that my spark should burn out in a brilliant blaze than it should be stifled by dry rot. I would rather be a superb meteor, every atom of me in the magnificent glow, than a sleepy and permanent planet. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. This is Zoe as a verb. To live on purpose, to choose every day as we set the thermostats of our life, to choose a way of being, which is the practice. It's setting our thermostats to this kind and quality of life. It's tuning our interior thermometers to life. And specifically, this is the practice. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us. And God's love is made perfect in us. Simple, right? There's the practice. Love one another. And everyone who does this is born of God. Are you going to hate some people along the way? Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to humanity. Don't stop doing this. Don't stop doing this. Love one another. Be born of God. And sure, the letter gets repetitive, but to be fair, we are forgetful. It may take 5 chapters of the same thing over and over for us to begin to let this sink in. When we set our thermostats to love, the life of God is alive in us. We are living, zozimane, this unconditional life. And when we do, the love of God is made complete in us. It achieves its point and purpose. This is like a self-fulfilling cycle of loving vitality. God is love, love each other and experience this deepest, fullest life, live this way, and God, who is love, by the way, is alive in us, which fulfills the purpose of it all, which is love, which inspires us to love one another, on and on and on. You sort of get the flywheel going, and it just keeps moving. God is love. Love is life. This life is love. That love is God. Live love. Live the experience of God. God's love is fulfilled in loving one another, and in that moment, it all begins again with a birth. We are born of God, and it all begins again. As we begin Advent, the birth of God in Christ has begun to open to us a universal call to love one another, for each and every person to be born of God. And at this time of year, certainly, we talk about sweet baby Jesus. We give special thanks. We pay close attention to this one-of-a-kind, unique child of God that we meet in Jesus. The one who grows up to pull back the curtain on this life of God that has been here all along, in and with us from the beginning, who pulls back the curtain on love and says, this is what it's all about. And by the way, this is what it's always been about. The one who just before he's killed for his scandalous life of love, he says, here's the new command, and it should sound familiar. You've had it from the beginning. Love one another. And then he breaks bread. And he offers a glass of wine to his friends. And what does he say? Because we're forgetful. He says, remember, practice, live this. Don't forget. Because tomorrow you might wake up and think it's about what you believe religiously. Don't buy it. Love one another. You might wake up and be afraid that you've been convinced to stop believing something that you always thought you needed to believe in order to be okay with God. Don't worry about it. Love one another. Be born of God again. Practice it, live it, don't forget it. Set that thermostat. Set your inner life by love. Tune your heart to this love. Remember, remember, remember. This table of life and love and remembrance has been set. It is open again tonight to us and to all people. To all people. To our friend Jairo, who was able to come and visit this week from Canada. To our friend Shanti, who's tuned in tonight from Sweden. To the many people who are a part of this, even though they're not in the room. This table, and granted, they can't grab this bread and this wine, but they know where to get bread and wine, they're fine. The table, that table is open to us and to all people. And no one will ever be turned away. If you'd like, feel free to come and grab a piece of bread and dip it in the cup.
We wanted to be trusty and true. but feathers fell from our wings, and we wanted to be worthy of you, but weather rained on our dreams, and we can't take back what is done, what is past. So fellas, lay down your feet, 'cause we can't take back what is done, what is past. So let us start from here. 'Cause we never wanted to be lusty or lewd, nor tethered to prudish strength. And we never wanted to be jealously tuned, nor withered into ugly things. But we can't take back what is done, what is past. So fellas, lay down your spears, 'cause we can't take back what is done, what is past. So let us start from here. And if all that you are is not all you desire, then come. Come, let yourself be wrong. Come now, it's already begun. Come, let yourself be wrong. Come now, it's already come. Come alone. Come with fear. Come with love. Come however you are. Just come. Come alone. Come with friends. Come with foes.
If you're our guest and you'd like to get to know us a little better, we'd love to connect with you in the back near the bar. Come chat with us. I've omitted the part about the Support and Connect table. I think that we're orienting people toward the phone. Yeah. Okay. And we're going, if you want more information on the community groups, download the app, check Facebook, or email us. info@wearecollectivechurch. Okay. We're not breaking down for the yoga chapel. I do have a footnote about the first Christmas. I have 6 books that I have in the car that I'm going to place on the bar tonight. I try and read this book every Christmas, and I look forward to not only having read it this year, but getting a chance to talk to people about it. That'll be on Wednesday the 7th. Thanks for being with us here and online. Your presence makes us who we are.
Coming fast, coming
Grace and peace.